Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Streamed and Screened, an entertainment podcast about movies and TV from Lee Enterprises. I'm Terry Lipshetz, managing editor of the National Newsroom at Lee and co-host of the program with Bruce Miller, editor of the Sioux City Journal, a longtime entertainment reporter, and someone who's getting ready to board a jet plane and head on out.
You cannot believe how ready I am. If you would push me out the door right now, I'd be there. That's how I feel. But it's, you know what the trick is that we are now officially in the new season of television. I'm calling it right now because all those shows that you didn't get in the fall, all the things you said, well, what about the 9th season of this or the 27th season of that? They're back. They're now spreading out through January and February, and you'll see all those ones return. Oddly enough, a lot of them are ending. This is their last season. If you are a big fan of a young Sheldon, Blue Bloods, Bob Hart's Abishola, all those are going to be ending soon. But here's your chance to see them. And also, I don't even know what year it is on Grey's Anatomy, but that sucker's still going too. So you get them back. Good Doctor, it's the last season for that. But then there are some new ones that you haven't heard about, perhaps. Tracker. Remember Justin Hartley? Justin Hartley from This Is Us?
Oh, yeah, sure.
The hunky one who never seemed to have anybody for more than a month.
Right. He was the Manny, right?
There you go. That's how you need to know him. Yeah, not to be confused with the Oscar nominee, Sterling K. Brown. But he's got his own series now. He's very much in that CBS kind of formula where he's a guy tracking people and he just goes around and really there is no supporting cast. He's the only one. But, you know, those shows have a following. It's surprising how you look and you say, CBS, it's been on for 10 years. I haven't watched more than one episode, but that's that show. And go ahead.
No, I was gonna laugh too because you mentioned it was the last season of Young Sheldon. I watched the first season, maybe the second season of it, and then I kind of tapped out. But he can't be so young anymore, is it? He's got to be more like teenage Sheldon or
middle-aged Sheldon, right?
Middle-aged Sheldon, right?
But they're talking about a spinoff for that, and it would not be anything with Sheldon, but it would be his brother. Brother would spin off into a different kind of show. Now, all right, good luck. Take the money, see what happens. And then there's another one that kind of is a spinoff, Elspeth. Have you heard of Elspeth?
I have not heard of that, no.
Carrie Preston, she was on The Good Wife as an attorney, and she's very kind of quirky. I think she's autistic. She has another look at the way the law should be handled. It's very much like Monk, and she's solving crimes. Again, not too far from the wheelhouse for CBS. So they'll be spinning those suckers for a while. Did you see Ted yet? Have you watched that on Peacock?
One of my brothers was texting me about that recently. He's, go check it out. I don't know if I could. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know.
Did he like it? Because I've had things.
Yeah, he seemed to like it, but I could see him liking it based on his humor.
Okay. Yeah, who knows what'll happen on some of the streaming services. Choir. Have you heard of Choir?
I might have. I haven't watched it.
It's a Disney Plus one. It comes at the end of January, and it's about a Detroit choir who kind of prepares for the big championship. It's a reality-based series. So you'll see very much like Cheer. Do you remember Cheer where they were going to a competition? That's it. And then have you been watching Masters of the Air?
I have not. Now, it's an Apple TV Plus program, and we all know my inability to subscribe to Apple TV Plus for more than like 3 months at a time. So good news here.
Oh, good.
I recently ordered some pizzas from a local place. Their online order thing. It's not a chain restaurant. It's just they have an online ordering service. And I just popped in my order. I paid for it. And then I got, as a thank you, here's 30 days free of Apple TV Plus. So I'm like, all right, well, I haven't had it in a few months. So it's my opportunity now to get caught up on the 4th season of For All Mankind. And Masters of Air, that is on my up next and ready to watch list.
Did you look at the bill on that one? Are you sure you're not getting a laptop and addition to this?
No, I just got my pizza.
Okay. So I hope it was good pizza. How expensive? Was it that much?
No, it's reasonably priced, local place. So I don't know, $30 for a few pizzas. So, solid.
All right, so it's about the price of the Apple TV Plus.
Right. Exactly. I'm paying for it one way or the other.
Then you just hunker in and watch that because it's very much like Band of Brothers, done by the same people who did Band of Brothers. These are airmen. It's Top Gun before Top Gun, really. Austin Butler, the young Elvis in Elvis. Harry Keoghan from Saltburn. Some names, and they're going through very much a similar kind of.
Yeah, it's World War II, like, yeah, the realities of war. And I love, like, the Pacific, because they did Band of Brothers first on HBO, and then they followed it up with the Pacific. I liked the Pacific; it was fine. I loved Band of Brothers. To me, that is one of the best miniseries ever to come out of HBO. That whole story.
I think sometimes where they go wrong is they think they need X number of episodes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then when you're trying to stretch, it becomes, and I can feel that kind of extension in the middle of some of these things. Capote versus the Swans, which is coming up, feud Capote versus the Swans, as one of those episodes in there where you go, they could have dumped this one, I'm fine. And even the ending, they could have trimmed that a little bit and we'd be a lot better off. But that one's starting this week as well. And it is good. It's one of those very juicy kind of Real Housewives look at history, because these are women in the 60s. And in the East Coast, you probably knew all of them. You knew Babe Paley probably, and CZ Guest and Slim. I'm sure you knew all of those people because they're out there. But you know how they were kind of not really housewives, but they were society doyens who went out to have lunch. The ladies who lunch. And they basically just talked about each other and then worried about their own husbands cheating on them, but they didn't want to get rid of the husband because the husband was the meal ticket. So there's a lot there to unpack. And then you toss in Truman Capote as the firebrand there, kind of just starting the fires. And it's fascinating. It's very gossipy in a way. And wait till you see it. You're going to say, Happy Rockefeller? Really? Happy Rockefeller? She was apparently a real pass-around pack there among the rich people. I had no idea, because I did meet Happy at one point. How's that for a
You're dating yourself.
Yeah, really. And I didn't think she was that kind of loose. But you listen to this. Now, everybody that they badmouth or say something like that about, dead. Do not think that this is necessarily the truth. That's a lot of that stuff is if they're dead, they feel they can say something about them because the dead can't sue for libel. You see that they wait for some of these series to come out until somebody's 6 feet under, and then they're good. Another limited series that I want to mention, but we'll talk about it more next week because I think it's very good, and I want to get you kind of all hyped up for this. It's on National Geographic Channel, part of that Genius series. Do you remember Genius? It had Aretha Franklin as one of the.
Oh, yeah.
It had Albert Einstein as another one. There were several of them. And now it's MLK/X. And it's about Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. And what it does is it draws parallels between the two civil rights leaders. Fascinating, really fascinating. And it tells you stuff that I had no clue about these two. But we'll talk more because I did talk with the actors and the producers about this, and we'll talk about it next week. So please, please, please listen to that because it is one that I think is much better than the average 10-part miniseries that you get. And there are a lot of kind of interesting things that they did in the process. Plus, the two guys who are playing Martin and Malcolm are in The Lion King. They're redoing The Lion King.
Oh.
Those two are the leads. One's Scar and one's Mufasa.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So, and we talk about Scar and Mufasa, so you'll get a lot of little things in one. It is one of those shows that I think bears the attention, even though we're in that mix now and it could get shoveled under.
Okay. There is another, I'm definitely going to check that out because I love watching those types of National Geographic programs. history buff. You mentioned a bunch of programs that are coming back now in their final season, and there's one that I was a little shocked that you didn't bring up because I thought you were a huge fan of it. That's Star Wars The Bad Batch, the final season comes out in February.
That's your wheelhouse. You know that
That is my wheelhouse.
I tap out. And isn't it funny how I span that old Star Wars era?
Yeah. I threw on the trailer for it because I have one of my daughters is a huge Star Wars fan like I am, and she didn't realize the new season was coming out. So she's in the living room, kind of just hanging out with me, and I just quietly turned it on, and she's looking at it like, what is this? What is this? And then because I had already seen it, and there's a few plot twists that look fascinating, a couple characters coming back from the Star Wars universe that we haven't seen in a while, and she's just her eyes are popping out of her head. So it should be a good final season. That was a show that I didn't feel like had a long shelf life to it because it kind of takes place leading into the events of the original Star Wars series from 77. So you couldn't go on too long with it, but it's one that kind of spins off from the earlier cartoons that they were doing a number of years ago. So I'm excited.
Well, then see, we hit a wall, but it's a good wall.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, I told you that they are borrowing series from all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
There are several Korean series that are going to be premiering around the networks, but there's one that I talked about last year, and I want you to listen because I did talk with the creator of this. It's called Son of a Critch, and it was created in Canada as one of those kind of Canadian content things. And then because of Schitt's Creek, it got a lot of attention, and the CW bought it for the U.S. Now, they've run the first 2 seasons already because they needed content. Well, they've caught up with the Canadian episodes, and so we're in the 3rd season, which takes place when young Mark Critch is in the 9th grade, or as they say in Canada, grade 9. And there are very many of these kind of Canadianisms that you're going to encounter for the first time. But I talked to Mark about this, and I wanted to know, what's the deal behind this whole series? What prompted it? What has it been like? What does the family think about it? And some of the things that he and I have in common. I live near Canada, and I got a lot of Canadian TV channels. And we talk about those Canadian TV channels, which you'll find out what this means. But I have an interview here with Mark Critch from Son of a Critch, and he plays also his father, Mike Critch, in the show. So I hope are you getting this all straight?
I'm following along.
Okay, because Mark is the young character played by another actor. And then he's also, the real Mark is in it as Dad Mike. So we're up to grade 9. It's in the 1980s, and it's called Son of a Critch. Okay, are we getting into the juicy years? Are the best stories yet to be told?
Well, we are getting a little bit juicy in that this year is the year when I started sneaking into bars underage to perform comedy. So it was at this point, I think, that Dad and Mom thought, oh boy, we got to get this horse back in the stable a bit. And, at that age, I was in the 9th grade, which was the top year of junior high for me. So I felt like I knew who I was, kind of the oldest kid in grade 9, wise and wizened.
Not at all.
Yeah, we've done it all. Life is passé. I'm done with the school stuff. So, we get into a bit more adventure, getting outside of the school grounds as we would, or past that yellow guardrail into the real world a bit more.
Did you take notes when you were growing up? Did you have a journal or a diary or something?
A little bit, but not really. No, there's lots of, but the one thing is, like, for me, I've told a lot of these stories a lot, and always talked about these things and would tell these stories. So, and for me, it was like all those years were kind of crystal clear to me because for me, it was so odd because we grew up on the outskirts of this town. And then going into the school on this long bus ride, I always feel like my house was the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, and the school was kind of like the planet I'd beam down to and, fight the aliens and come back, So I was like, what the hell was that? It's like, that's the way people deal with it in society, Mark. But there aren't any other kids around. So a lot of that was kind of burned into the old head, you know.
What will trigger a memory from that time? I mean, do you have to look at pictures? What do you do to kind of conjure the moment? There are scenes that are so specific. I mean, I can relate to them and I go, oh my God, I remember those things.
Oh, great. Yeah. Well, what I find is, you know, I guess the first season would be a lot of like greatest hits memories, you know, for you. Like, these are really important. I remember this from that time. And then the more you write and the more memory I find personally anyway, having written a book about growing up and now the show, is the more doors you open, the more doors are inside that room that open up on their own. You know, you'll be like, oh, I remember that nun and she did this thing and she came in the classroom and, oh, right, wait, oh, geez, oh, you know what else? And then these other things will kind of open up and it makes you reflect on things a bit more. Like, say this season, my brother starts on the radio and he takes a radio name because he has the same name as my father, who also worked.
Campbell.
Yeah, and that he's on the air still with that name. And that created a lot of tension in the house. But in the getting to that year and remembering that, I'm like, oh yeah, that was, I remember Dad was upset. Oh God, well, that, you know, you don't think about these things until you think about it. And then there's always like there's a little epiphany or a memory or something that'll happen. And plus talking a lot with my brother about these years as well. Now that we're doing this and all these things kind of bubble up. And so that's kind of exciting.
When you have another writer working on the series, how do you get them on the same track as you? That can't be.
Generally what will happen is when the writer's room comes, I'll have like all 13 episodes mapped out. Okay, this is what I want to do. This is the story. This is the arc. This is that, and this and that. And then we'll talk about it. And then they'll come back with a draft. And then I'll probably rewrite a lot of the dialogue and reshape it at the end. And because it's so personal, it's very much, plus like the language is, from where I am too, it's this kind of like this, it's a very specific kind of a thing. If you have to be there, it's very tough to write from the outside. And it's, you know, it's dated and stuff, but it's all conversational and it's all kind of hand in hand as all the episodes are written.
Did your family think this is not going to work? This is a stupid idea to turn your life story into a book and a series? I mean, were they?
Well, initially the book, by the time the book came out, both my parents had passed. My mom passed just before it came out. And my brother is with us. And he's kind of like, why are you doing this? Why do you have to go talking about this? And he's a character, you know? So it's like, oh, for the love of God. That's the last thing anybody wants. The younger brother talking about their life, you know, on television. But I think there's something like, well, the thing, I started telling some of these stories, and Alan Doyle, who was a musician here, was with a band called Great Big Sea, quite popular up in Canada. And I remember telling him a couple of these stories about growing up years ago. He turned to me and said, what? But I the part of the story I was getting to was not interesting. He said, you grew up where? How? Where did you grow up? There? With who? How old are we? And this kind of thing. And I was like, I remember that moment going, oh God, I'm weird. You know, because you don't realize until somebody's like, you know, you say something and you think it's like totally normal. And I say that a lot coming from a place called Newfoundland, where we'll have odd turns of phrase. And then I'll realize while I'm talking that not everybody uses those words, you know, and I'll go, oh my God, that's not a real word. That's something we say. But like that with the memory, I remember saying to him something and going, oh my God, that's a weird memory. So I think that, but the heart and soul of everything is, you know, we've all felt like outsiders. We've all been afraid to tell someone we love them. We've all been bullied. So it's a mixture, I think, of specificity and oddness, but also this thing that we all share is just this kind of feeling like an outsider.
Do you look at something like The Wonder Years as an inspiration for you, or The Goldbergs, for example, which also does something like this, or not?
No, for me, the big one was A Christmas Story. I remember seeing that as a kid. And for me, that was like, oh, wow. I remember feeling like that kid Ralphie, and the family was reminding me a lot of my family. And even though that was set in the 50s, I thought, oh, I totally get this. And then The Wonder Years was on when I was a kid, and that was set in the 60s. And I was in the 80s, but I watched that show and I was thinking like those guys. Like I remember the feelings that they were talking about issues that related to my life. And now I'll have parents tell me and kids tell me that they watch the show when it airs on television. Like not they don't wait to stream it. They'll watch it as a family. The parents will watch kind of for nostalgia, and the kids will watch because they're 12, 13, 14, 15, and they're afraid to tell someone they like them, or they're getting bullied, or things like that. So each generation will watch thinking it's their show, which I kind of love about that. And then they'll talk about it afterwards, you know? So families will say to me, it's really nice that we watch this together as a family. It's the only show we watch together. And it's the only show we talk about after, because we share. They say, I'll tell them, oh, something like that happened to me when I was a kid. And they'll say, oh, this happened to me, something like that at school. And so they have conversations. And I think that's a great gift if you can, you know, spur a conversation in the house these days. I love that.
You know, I grew up in North Dakota, which was so close to Canada that we all of the Canadian TV shows. It was constantly like that. But the thing I remember most about Canadian TV was that it was like not rated. And so you would have nudity on television at night.
That's the French, I tell you.
Was that ever an influence for you? I mean, did you ever go, oh my God, we got to watch TV after 10 o'clock because we're going to see stuff?
Oh yeah, 100%. There was a channel called Showcase, and they had, and there was the French channel. So it was all French. And then all of a sudden it was the boudoir, you know, at not 10:30. And it's like, what the heck? And because like other channels, like there would be those cable channels too, like the movie channels, that you would hold the knob in between and you would get the staticky image of you'd see like maybe some nudity go by, but it may be, what is it? Or you could turn over to channel, you know what? It was channel 12. I still remember the channel, the French channel. And you would turn it on and there'd be like just people, you know, just smoking cigarettes and making love all day. And it's like, what's the show? There's not even a plot. And there'd be like a little plot. There'd be like, you know, we have to get on the hovercraft. What? And then you'd go back to making love. Right. And then it'd be like, you know, well, what the hell? So yeah, that was great for us, you know, and staying up. But the problem is you'd always have your hand on the knob in case the parents,
in case anybody came in.
And then right away it's, you know, Don Rickles on the Tonight Show, then flick back. So yeah.
Yeah, it was like, we'll watch Headline Hunters. I think that was, or, you know, you're saying we're watching Headline Hunters. That's all we're watching. And then the parents would come in, you know, and as soon as they left the room, click, and we were over to another channel. But that's the thing that I remember most about Canada. And I thought, will this translate well to an American audience? Have you had responses like that from people who say, oh, we don't understand these people at all, or it's exactly what we needed?
Well, you know, I think it's what I find, like, I think audiences have changed a lot now. Like if you tried to show a show about Newfoundland, Canada in the 80s on a Thursday night in the 80s, it's not set in New York. All television shows had to be set in New York, right, except for Newhart. That's it. You have no choice. But now I think people are so used to things like whether it's Fargo or you might be on Netflix and see some show about Iceland. I think people are probably more willing to escape into a different place and not get every other word, you know, or there might be a bit that you don't understand, but that's okay. And I think audiences are a bit forgiving that way. So far, I've only, you know, I guess I've heard good things from people. Like, you know, I'll hear from people. Somebody wrote the other day from Connecticut. They love the show and things like that. So they seem to be getting it and understanding it and enjoying it. But I guess those who don't, you don't hear from them because they stop watching. But yeah, we and you know, Canada and you know, whether it's SCTV or what have you, like for so long, I think we've been popping our heads in here every now and then that there may be some forgiveness for things.
Yeah, it's interesting how this catches on. But how was it when you made those first 2 seasons without an American audience watching it, really? And now you're up to speed, right?
Yeah.
Because we're seeing them just as soon as you would see them. So how difficult is that? Because you could be in this vacuum before, but now you kind of have to, you know, pay attention to the times. Is that a problem or not?
No, I think like, I don't think you can change it, because if I wouldn't want to change things too much because we're on in America, you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't want to go, oh, I'm not going to mention the Queen or something. Sure. You know what I mean? Because then you're just kind of like censoring yourself for something that's true or honest, you know, like you might keep an eye on. So there might be something like, oh, well, we don't have to get into this. Like say there's one thing now, like where grading a test, right? Whether it's a D and 90% of this, like that we'll get network notes like from the CW and Lionsgate or distributors. They'll be like, oh, we don't really understand that. I was like, oh, okay, I could switch that. Little things like that,
Sure.
Which is helpful because you don't really know until somebody brings it up. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Sure, grade 9 is an example of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Grade 9, but there you go.
Yeah, 100%, right? So, but I mean, from Canada, like there's lots of things that are different that we watch from America too, but we're not like going like, oh my God, I don't understand what grade, so you kind of roll with it, I think, if you're going to.
One last thing, because I know they want me to go, but what's it like being dad?
That's great because the first time I did stand-up, Dad was so well known in Newfoundland where I grew up as a radio personality. I did an impression of him. And he came in when I was in a bar, underage got upset. And that's actually episode 12 of this show. So standing there playing my dad, yelling at me for doing an impression of my dad, as a kid, like the Benjamin's playing me and I'm playing my dad. That was a bit weird. But what a great gift it gives me is memory is such a personal, selfish thing. You remember things the way you want to remember them. And playing my father makes me kind of put on my dad glasses and look at the situation from his point of view. And it's really brought me a lot closer to him and made me realize maybe more the truth of the memory when you start to put yourself in through somebody else's perspective. So it's been a great gift, trying to get in his shoes.
Well, thank you so much. I think it's such a fun show. But now start showing the dirty channels. I think that's part of it for the next season.
What? I just made a note here in my little scribbler to show the dirty channel because this year there is a naughty magazine that pops up. So from there, the dirty channel.
It's X-rated beyond this, that's how... Hey, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Really enjoyed it.
Great one.
Thanks, Bruce, for that interview. It sounds like an interesting show. Might have to go check that out because I was a little confused when you first shared the information with me that you had this interview or that you're going to focus in on this series, because from what it looked like, the CW was just going to pick up with the third season. But I'm glad to see that they went back and aired everything so you can get caught up, and it feels kind of like Schitt's Creek where, everybody went back and binged it. It's funny with some of these Canadian programs, and I know some of them have kind of bled down from Canada into the US, and one that was on, I guess it was on air up in Canada in the 90s for a long time, and it may have been picked up also by some PBS networks, but only in ones that kind of made sense. So I was at my in-laws, I think it was around Christmas time, and my father-in-law was flipping through his streaming services because that's big for them. They just got into some streaming services recently, and he says, "Have you ever watched the Red Green Show?" And I'm like, "I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about." I'm like, "What is it?" So he pops it in, and it's sort of the strangest thing. It's kind of like a home improvement type of show, but it's a sketch comedy. It's sort of like if SNL met Home Improvement, met The Kids in the Hall, and you squished it all together, you kind of have this show. And even my wife had seen it because I guess it was on like Wisconsin PBS way back in the day. And I said to her, like, why would they show this on New Jersey PBS? Like, this is not going to land with any audience out there.
You have no point of reference, right?
There is no point of reference on. I don't know. Maybe they did show it at some point, but I could assure you I'd never seen the Red Green Show, and it was funny. I mean, I guess it's.
Are you a fan now?
If it was on and I was sitting there watching it, I would be fine with watching it, but it's not something I'm going to go seek out.
Are you a Letterkenny fan?
I have no idea. What is that? Was that the...
Okay, well, that's another Canadian show. Check it out. It's called Letterkenny, all in one word. And it's about the weirdest people you'll ever see, who sit along the roadside and just watch what happens and then comment. It's very odd, but it's one of those Canadian shows where you go, how in the hell did this get on the air? That's Canadian content. You could be watching a beaver or an otter or an elk or a moose walking across the screen, or you could be doing a history project. You go, what is this? And then you could have something that's just wildly different, like nudity, and it becomes a Canadian content show. So there you are.
Yeah, it's funny too with Canadian shows. One that I did watch a lot when it was out originally, because I think it got picked up by maybe HBO or one of those, was The Kids in the Hall, which is from Canada, sketch comedy, similar in a way to like a Saturday Night Live. But Dave Foley, who was on that, one of the comics that was on it, I haven't seen him in years. And then all of a sudden, until Fargo, when he shows up, and he comes on screen and he's got the eye patch on and he starts talking, and I'm thinking to myself, I know you from somewhere, but he's got white hair and he's obviously so much older than when I last saw him on Kids in the Hall, and he ended up turning into pretty much my favorite character. He played that kind of slimy lawyer Danish Graves, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody,
but he has a twist or a turn.
He has an unfortunate twist in his storyline. We'll just leave it at that.
So you haven't seen the new Kids in the Hall episodes that are on Amazon?
No, I didn't even realize they brought it back.
Oh, get ready, because they're naked most of the time.
Oh, geez.
It's that Canadian content right there. That's what you're getting.
Yeah, that is Canadian. I think wasn't it the Kids in the Hall too, where one of the sketches they would do regularly was somebody would be out in the distance and one of the characters would take his
squishing your head.
I'm squishing your head, and use his fingers to squish your head, and that's hilarious TV for you.
Yeah, that's a fun set. Look what we laughed at, right? Okay, I got to find out about the in-laws though. How'd they get the Red Green show? Was it through?
So
what was the service?
I'm trying to think. They used to have kind of like a traditional cable box, and I know at one point I was talking to my wife's sister, and we were even chatting about like helping them maybe find a way to get off some of the more expensive things, because they just don't watch a lot of TV. They're very set in their ways, obviously, with certain things that they want to watch. And so we talked a little bit about, yeah, they need certain programs, and then that's basically all they need. They don't need, $400 a month cable subscription. So they got a very basic plan from the cable company, and they're using a Roku stick. And part of Roku is you've got those free channels, and some of those free channels, it's like 24/7 of the A-Team, like 24/7 of Knight Rider, and one of them is 24/7 of the Red Green show. So you can just put it on a nonstop loop and watch all 7,000 episodes that they did up in Canada.
Come here. I think you missed this one. You haven't seen this one, right? Oh, that.
Right, exactly.
Well, did they get a free pizza?
I don't think they got the free pizza because we don't live close enough for them to eat at the place I got mine from.
Yeah, we got to remember that. Always get pizza there. You might be able to get Hulu and all the other ones as long as you're at it.
Yeah, I'll just continuously subscribe and cancel, subscribe and cancel. I think I could get Paramount Plus next. Another pizza away from that.
Are you a Star Trek person?
I am to a degree. I love all the movies for the most part. Some of the series I've kind of come and gone with. I have not watched any of the recent series or that animated one, which I've heard good things about, but I think at some point I'll have to get Paramount so I can watch that.
I told you that I sat in all of the captain's chairs but the first one, and they were all very hard, but I've been on the set of all of those shows and I have absolutely no interest in them. So the idea that I got to do that was wasted on me.
Yeah, I started to watch a few years ago. I think it was before they started that Paramount network. Almost all of the Star Trek series were on Netflix. So I remember watching The Next Generation because I would watch bits and pieces of it when it originally aired, but I didn't sit there religiously and watch every single episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. So I'm like, oh, let me go back and watch it. So I start watching. I think I made it through the entirety of season 1, and then I finally said, these are not worth my time. I can't keep on going. I like the movies, but I can't invest all this time into 9 different series. And
those had those hamburger helper episodes where they were just they're not telling you anything new. They're just kind of keeping it going. The light is on.
Right. Yeah. I think if somebody were to get to me the critical episodes to watch in all of those series. Send me the list, and then I will focus in on, watching like the 10 greatest episodes of each series, and I think I'd be totally fine with that.
I think we're good. That's a great challenge. Throw that out there. If somebody can do that for you, dear, we're there.
Perfect. I think that's a good way to wrap up this episode too, before it goes on for too long, right?
Be with us. Yes. Be with us next week, though, when I talk MLK/X.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're looking forward to that. I know you've got the interviews lined up, so we'll talk about that soon. Good luck. Enjoy your trip out west, where it's hopefully a little bit warmer than Iowa right now.
Yeah. Wait, I think there's supposed to be like record rain coming. So,
oh no,
how good is that for me? Not.
You'll land in LA and there'll be snow on the ground, and we'll all know that the apocalypse is coming.
And then the pestilence, the everything else is going to be there. The COVID part 2, everything, because every time I've gone there, something has happened.
Something is going out there. So
I've been through an earthquake. I've been through war, famine, pestilence, and all the others. So fingers crossed, and we'll find out everything else we know from that.
All right, sounds good. And we'll see you again with another episode of Streamed and Screened.